Lou, are you around? We have a question about, we've gotten a lot of questions about if we're going to have recordings of today's event. I have been recording, but I got a little message that because I've been muted, that it might not work. So fingers crossed that we'll have recordings we can send to everyone. And that was the one a lot of people were interested in, was the Amtrak one. So if we do have recording and that was successful, I'll send it to everyone who registered. Oops, I'm just like allowing people to talk and now we're getting some background noise. Sorry. I just thought if it's a smaller panel, why not, in case this panel
Sorry, Angie.
more towards that. Sorry, Will. No,
Sorry about that.
I can mute you too, so watch that. But if anyone does want to chime in and talk, hopefully we won't have any spammers, but I think that will work in this session. I'm trying to reach Cam. I don't know what's going on with Cam. But I haven't been able to reach him. So that would be too bad if Cam isn't available for some reason. I'm trying to reach him and maybe he'll join us a little late. But so far I have not been able to reach him. And so for those who don't know, Cam Hardy is a Cincinnati guy who helped lead their transit referendum that was successful a couple of years ago, just sort of as an unpaid grassroots advocate. And since he accomplished that, we've also seen Toledo expand transit. And now there's a new proposal in Columbus for a transit levy that would add some bus rapid transit. That was just announced a couple days ago. Oh, Sharon, you're back. So yeah, we'll see. It could be though that Cam is not coming for some reason. So we just have about 1 minute left, but we do have Brian Boland here, who is leading a pretty cool campaign down in Cincinnati around the Brent Spence Bridge, a huge mega project. I know he has a presentation prepared, so let's give people 1 more minute because 5 is when we're officially supposed to start, and then we'll turn it over to him. Hopefully we'll hear from Cam. But if not, like I said, I expected a little bit smaller crowd for this session. It could be a little bit more interactive. So if people want to chime in, as long as it's okay with Brian, with sort of questions or comments, as long as we're not interrupting his flow or anything, that might work okay in this session.
So Andy, did I hear you say that it is going to be recorded?
Yes, I have been recording. There's Cam. We got him. Yay. Just in time. Oh, 1 sec. Yes, I have been recording. I did get a message about an error, so I'm not 100%. I'm a little bit concerned that maybe there'll be a problem with it, but if not, I will mail the recording to everyone who registered. So we have everyone's email who registered, and we'll get you one.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Hey, Cam, can you hear us?
Yes, hello, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Can't complain. It's been a heck of a day.
Oh my gosh, tell me about it. We called this a happy hour session and that was just supposed to be a cutesy thing, but I'm like, I really need a beer. I really wish I would have had one stocked. That's kind of sad.
Man, who you telling?
Um, cool. So like I said, I think we're expecting a little bit smaller. This session is supposed to be for advocates. I think we're expecting a little bit smaller crowd. We have two really inspiring speakers. So we're going to give them both a little bit of a chance to talk about their work. I don't know who wants to go first. It looks like maybe Brian's got his all sort of ready to go. So maybe we'll go with him first. And like I said, if you feel like we don't want to be rude or anything, but if you do feel like you have a question, it might be okay to sort of just chime in with the comments and questions. Are you ready? Ready, Brian, or?
Sure, I'm ready. Could you guys hear me? Good. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. I've got a little 5-slide presentation to kind of just show the vision of what host has disabled participant screen sharing. So
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
We haven't done any screen sharing. Let me see if I can figure that out. Maybe we should have Cam go first.
It's fine with me.
Cool.
Are you ready, Cam?
Oh, I'm ready. I'm always ready.
All right.
To roll.
All right.
This is stuff I love to talk about. This is beautiful. Yeah. So I'm Cam Hardy. I'm the president and co-founder of the Better Bus Coalition. We started the Better Bus Coalition about 6 or 7 years ago. And it started off as just a small group of bus riders who, wanted change in the county, who wanted a better bus service. At the time, I was in college, and I was working security at night and going to school during the day, and the buses was breaking down daily. And one day, I just fired up my Facebook Live and kind of went off about it. And that spiraled into me actually being able to meet the CEO of our transit agency at the time. And he then broke down the financial issues that we were having and everything else. And so we took that information and we started a grassroots organization. And I don't believe that we were taken seriously at first. I think we were just looked at as a bunch of bus riders with loud mouths, and particularly myself, who spouted off on social media. But we were really able to make a huge impact. And some of the things that, some of the issues that we worked on were just around making our transit system better via low-hanging fruit. So we understood that politically it took politicians to put something on the ballot to make it happen. But we wanted our transit agency to do improvements without the extra money, such as giving people a place to sit at bus stops. We had approached the transit agency a few years ago about putting more benches out and bus shelters out. We had a list of bus stops that had high ridership, but absolutely nowhere for people to sit. And so the people at the transit agency at that time told us they had the money and just giving us a runaround. So we said, screw that. We're going to build the benches ourselves and put them at bus stops. And we were successful in doing that. Our benches are now legally allowed to be at bus stops. We got it written into the municipal code, so that's great. And now Metro has their own bus bench program and bus shelter program that they now put out, benches and bus stops and things like that. And part of the thing that we were doing too with this was adopting the bus stop. So we didn't just want to plop a bench there. We wanted to make this bus stop, more appealing and more, and keep it clean and, make sure that it had pride in it. I think that, a lot of the issues stemmed around our leaders not having pride in the system that they were in charge to run. And part of that being is that the people that oversaw the system never rode the bus, and so that's another thing that we worked hard on is getting bus riders and people that, share our visions on the sorter board. That's the board that oversees Metro. One of the biggest things, and then I'll turn it over to Brian. One of the biggest things we were able to do was successfully pass an initiative to improve public transportation in our county. We've never had a tax increase for our bus system. Our bus system was private, and then the city bought it in the 70s. And then they passed a tax. They passed a tax to get it started, but they never passed a tax to expand it. So we have been using 70s money to fund a system that was not in the 70s anymore. And so we were able to successfully, we have the second highest sales tax in the state now, but 130 million goes to our public transportation system every year. I'm sorry, 100 million of that goes to our public transportation system every year. 30 million of it goes to roads and bridges that the buses ride on. So, we were able to get Democrats, Republicans, independents, people who never thought about riding a bus all together to get this historic tax passed. And so now my coalition is focused on implementation and making sure that the money is spent correctly, and making sure that BRT, we have a true bus rapid transit. That is one of the biggest things that we went to the community, and that's what they want. So we want to make sure that it's true BRT, dedicated lane BRT. So that's something that we are constantly in communication with the sorter board and with our transit agency about every single day. So yeah, that's the Better Bus Coalition. It's been very exciting. It's been a heck of a ride. You would have told me years ago that I would have got into transit advocacy, I would have laughed at you. But it's something that's very important to me. I don't own a car. I ride the bus everywhere. I depend on it, and there are other people that depend on it too, and they deserve the best. So that's why we're in this fight, and that's me.
So CAM is really a force because you are doing all this work. You are the face of this successful levy, really, and you are unpaid, right? That was all unpaid volunteer work for you. Is that correct?
That is correct. A lot of people think that I work for the transit agency, but I don't. I'm a paralegal during the day. That's what I do.
He's got a day job, right. He's just
job.
a true, very successful advocate. And I think you mentioned your social media, but I thought that your, first of all, I thought you were so credible as the leader of the movement. Someone who rides the bus, and has lived in Cincinnati for your whole life, right?
Yes.
And I thought that the way you handled critics on social media was very diplomatic. Actually, you were being critical of yourself, but I thought your style was right on point. Really a lot of credit to you. And one thing I think is a cool lesson that can be taken from Better Bus Coalition and some of the work you did around bus seating, which I'm trying to, I'm a little bit involved with Clevelanders for Public Transit here, and I'm trying to incorporate that kind of thinking into more of the advocacy groups I'm involved with. It is, if we can do more, I think it's sort of key. If you're an advocacy group, if your role is just sort of complaining all the time, you're not going to win folks in the community over quite as much as if you can say, well, here's something we really care about these folks. We're providing this value add. So I think that is a good lesson from your campaign too. That work that you did with the bus shelters and built a lot of goodwill sort of for your cause right off the bat.
Yeah, and another thing too is we never wanted to come off as adversarial to the transit agency per se. We understand that they're a government entity, and they work within the balance that they work within, and they work with the money that they get. And when you're flat broke, you can't do anything to stabilize anything. So we acted as sort of a partner with them, and an unspoken partner, because like I said, we never worked for them, and we did find ourselves criticizing the transit agency every now and then, but we worked as a partner with them to just kind of be like a lobbyist for them at City Hall, because our politicians was just so out of touch. No one knew we even had a bus system that was failing because they never rode it. And so one of the big things that we were able to do too was we aligned ourselves with our municipal elections. And in 2017, in 2017, we made that entire election about the bus system. Our incumbent mayor, he got reelected, but after he was reelected, he started riding the bus, because we given him so much heartburn during his reelection that he had to actually do some work to get reelected, because, we were outraged that we have politicians in charge that just that they were clueless, So yeah, it's been really good. It's been very inspiring. It's been very inspiring.
So I think it's really timely to hear from you, because now there was a successful transit levy expansion in Toledo, which is huge for them. And one of the people that was, I know that we have some folks from the Ability Center here, and the Ability Center was really instrumental apparently in helping pass that. So that's wonderful. And now, just a couple of days ago, we see a new proposal out of the city of Columbus for an expansion, which is something that, is really historic. Columbus's bus system has been sort of bare bones forever, right? So they're talking about a bus rapid transit system, a serious tax increase. So, across the state now, we're seeing some sort of energy about transit referendums at the local level. And even in Cleveland, there's been advocates have been pressing for a levy for a while, but our former administration was having none of it. None of the people, for some reason, none of the people in office seem to be very supportive, even though we pass every levy that comes on the ballot in Cleveland. We're constantly passing levies. So we have a new mayor now who has, even when he was campaigning, said he had an openness to looking for new sources of revenue. So I'm not going to speak for him and what he thinks is possible and how he will approach it, but there's definitely more possibility here too now.
Yeah, I think the energy. See, and another one of the things that we were able to do was, we try to take the political BS out of the conversation. This was not about parties. This was not about partisanship. This was about people, and this was about this being a basic function of the city. We talk about basic services, our police, our fire, and things like that. And I think that a bus system is a basic function that government should provide. And I think that resonated with people who might not really think about, public transportation or even, dream about catching a bus. But I just think that we were able to marry a lot of different coalitions together. It's all about coalition building. Shout out to Columbus and Toledo. Been following them. It's all about coalition building. That's my biggest advice, is coalition building. We had some very polarizing politicians on our side with issue 7. But I think that if it wasn't for them, it wouldn't have got over the hump. I mean, it passed by like 900 votes. It was very, very close. It was in the middle of the pandemic as well, so that added to it. But, we definitely had help from our partners, and it takes a team. It definitely takes a team. We started the movement. We were the face of the movement as the activists. But once we got the ball rolling, I believe that, the corporate community, the politicians saw that it couldn't be stopped, so then they joined in, So that's what I would say is get your coalition together, get it iron tight, and then take that to the community.
So I think we'll shift over to Brian in a little bit, but I guess I don't want to stop, because I did just open this up for people. I don't want to sort of dictate too much, but one question I have just off the bat is since you're talking about the coalition, who were your most important coalition partners? Was there sort of a tipping point where once a certain player got involved that it was easier to sort of line up other supporters? And that's for you, Cam, if you're able to say.
I'm sorry, say that again. My bad.
No, it's okay. Who were your most important coalition partners? And was there like one or two groups that getting them on board really changed the game for you?
That's a great question. I would say it was a number of things that happened. I would say that getting the business community involved and aligned with where we were going, as well as some high-ranking Republicans, because the thing is we had to go to the state legislature to get laws changed in order to even put this on the ballot. And so if it wasn't for Bill Seitz and some others, who I don't agree with them on anything outside of this issue, but again, they saw the benefits of a functioning bus system and a better bus system for our county. So this was something that they were willing to put their support behind. And like I said, I think without them, we probably wouldn't have been as successful as we were. So I mean, it took a lot of people for sure. But I would say the business community. I went out and got the activists. I went out and made sure that we were on the ground. My job was to make sure that on the ground was solid, that people were engaged, the voters knew. Then the partners came involved. So, like I said, business community, and then some of our state legislators were a big help.
And I'm sorry, I keep asking you more questions. We're definitely, but
No, you're
we'll
good.
definitely get to you, Brian. But can you give us a sense for the scale of the expansion? So
Yeah. So basically, we raised our sales tax 0.8%, and it equals out to $130 million a year. 100 million goes to our bus system, which is called the Reinventing Metro Plan, which calls for 24-hour bus service on major corridors, more bus routes, more frequencies, BRT, which is bus rapid transit for those who don't know. I'm pretty sure everybody on this call knows what that is. But yeah, BRT lines, it's 4 of those that are involved. And then $30 million was set aside for roads and bridges. And that is where the business community was instrumental, because I'll be honest. When they proposed this to me at first, I was against it because I was concerned that this was going to turn into a roads tax, and it was none of the money was going to go to the bus system. But there was provisions that were put in there to make sure that even the $30 million benefits the bus system. So lighting at bus stops, better bus benches, better bus shelters, crosswalks. We were able to build these things into the plan. And again, make it broad. So even if you don't ride the bus, you ride the road, you drive on the roads, you want your roads paved. Well, this is something that you can get behind and support. So yeah, that's the answer.
So are you able to, I'm sorry, I keep coming. Are you able to see examples now in the community where people will say, this changed my life because now I can, now that we have 24-hour bus service, this opportunity is available to me that wasn't before? Or
Absolutely. The highest, I was just meeting with our transit CEO a few days ago. The highest overnight ridership is on our west side of town, where it has high Hispanic population, high middle income population. So these people are working overnight. These people are going to jobs. These people are going to prosperity, essentially. And this was not possible before issue 7 and before the transit levy. So we've definitely, even through the pandemic, we've seen success in the overnight ridership, even through our ridership not gaining back to where it was pre-pandemic. The overnight ridership is booming because people are able to, get to jobs and necessarily don't have to work 9 to 5, and everybody's life, our bus system used to be revolved around 9 to 5. And we're unraveling that. And it's a beautiful thing because everybody's life is not downtown centric nor 9 to 5 centric.
awesome, thanks. I think we will go to Brian now, who's going to talk. It's a little bit of a shift. His campaign, and it's an ongoing campaign, is related more around a road project, a highway project. Are you able to share now, Brian?
Yeah, if I can jump in real quick and comment on Cam. Cam, one of the things that I will tell people all the time, the next step is getting land use laws aligned with transit. If you keep building single family detached homes, people are not going to get on the bus in the numbers you'd like to see. But if we can get, in Cincinnati just last week, we had an uprising against a density provision. And I think there's a lot of NIMBYism that goes into that. And I think they need to come back and explain to people why density is good, the economics of it, the reality of it that isn't, I don't want, that apartment building in my backyard. Because there are big advantages. And, transit is about trip aggregation. People who live in a shed, walking to a stop, getting on a bus, going to another stop, getting off, and having somewhere to go at that other end. But the land use laws we have in place are where the next round needs to go, because if we can't get the developments and get the developers to start building things around those transit stops, it's going to make utilization of the system more difficult than it needs to be. So just my 2 cents worth.
No, I agree with you, Brian. And I'm learning more and more about the density ordinance and this whole density conversation. And I told the council members that I would love to be a part of, helping move this conversation forward, because housing and public transportation goes hand in hand. And, people are being, basically overpriced in the city. But we're building this grand bus system for who? For what? You know what I mean? So I agree. The density conversation, we have to keep plugging along with it. And we definitely got to keep it in the forefront. Affordable housing is an issue in our city. So these two issues go hand in hand. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. And so housing is one of the things that is a side benefit to the program that I'm working on. The program revolves around the Brent Spence Bridge, which is this mega project we have down here that has languished for a decade. Don't know if anybody is familiar with what happened, but the first ideas came out in the early 2000s. I think 2004 was when ODOT first started talking about the Brent Spence companion bridge. It's not a replacement, a companion project. And they first started putting lines on paper showing what they wanted to do with the bridge. And in 2004, I found the first article. If you guys know the history of Cincinnati, we had some tough times in the early 2000s. We had our riots in 2001. Major companies like Kroger were threatening to move out of the city if they didn't fix things. And we got the collaborative agreement done here to help policing and improve that. And while they haven't always been perfect, 3CDC has done an amazing job of taking a neighborhood that was once the most crime-ridden and decrepit in the country and turning into something that's a big attraction for the city now. So in the mid 2000s, there was a lot going on down here that didn't show us that the investment we made in Fort Washington Way, which is the image you see behind me here, that project was completed in the year 2000. So we have our riots, we have a lot of unrest. Then 2008 comes and we have the economic downturn. So this big investment that we did in our riverfront doesn't really start to bear fruit until the mid 2010s. And I tell people our kind of coming out party was when we hosted the All-Star game in 2015. And that's when our beautiful riverfront park was finished and we had a lot going on and kind of people started realizing what was happening, and OTR took off. And now we have every week, it seems like there's another project to convert an empty office building into housing and bring people back to the city. So back in the mid 2000s, when this bridge project was being done, people couldn't see into the future and see where we are today. Truth in advertising, at that time, I actually lived in Northern Kentucky. And so I thought, what you people do on that side of the river, I don't care, just don't mess up my side of the river. Then I made the big leap. I was a suburban kid and I moved into the city, within the city limits. And all of a sudden I looked at this plan and I thought, man, that's the worst bridge plan I've ever seen. So let me jump in and show you guys what the bridge plan actually is and walk you through our idea. And Cam, one of the things that I've tried to do with this is talk to the people at SORTA, talk to the people at Tank. This is a bridge project, but what highway engineers tend to do is always think of ways to get more cars on the road and make them go faster. I'm not a highway engineer, so my job is to figure out ways to maybe not get as many cars on the road, make things connected in ways that people can get around without having to jump in their car. And so that's integrally part of my plan. So real quick, can you guys all see the slide I've got up here? It's the bridge.
I can, yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure I'm on the right screen. So this is the Brent Spence Bridge where it crosses the river from Kentucky into Ohio. And the bridge is just one part of the project I'm working on. It's actually more about how you get to the bridge in Ohio and in Northern Kentucky, because that's where the big advantage comes in. So what I'm really talking about is in this image, on the left, you have the current image of the bridge where it lands. You've got a tangle of ramps and overpasses. That takes up 45 acres of land on the western edge of our downtown. And In the 1950s, when it was built, that land was regarded as less desirable. And well, we all know what was going on in the 50s. They were using the Highway Act as a way to clear out slums and get rid of blight. So this was the plan they came up with. They bulldozed in this neighborhood called Kenyon Bar. They bulldozed 10,000 properties, dislocated 25,000 people, and we got a highway out of it. We're trying to influence this because on the right-hand side of this image, you see what ODOT has proposed as the eventual fix for this. And if you're looking at that and thinking, well, those images look basically the same, you're right. And our contention is that we shouldn't leave this land right adjacent to our downtown to highway ramps. And while there is some green in that picture, the only people that'll ever see that green is the grounds crew. We think there's something better that can be done. And that better, we don't have to look far to find the model for it. We've already done it once. It was our Fort Washington Way project, where we took a 1950s highway project that had something like 20 entrances and exits. It was known to be bad for small fender benders, usually not bad ones, but all the time lanes were blocked because of traffic accidents. We took that, we simplified that plan, ran the highways through, compressed the footprint, and gave back 19 acres of land. And then the big switch was we connected our downtown back to the riverfront, back to that shore where those first people landed in this city for 200 years and got off their boats and decided to try and make a life here. And like I said, it took until the mid 2010s for it to finally really be shown, for the discovery to appear of what happened with that project and how powerful it was for the city. So we're saying that the same thing can be done. If we look at this land here, this part of that 45 acres, we can gain back 25 acres of land if we reconfigure the highway right. And down here in Cincinnati, a couple of the projects that we are trying to get done as a community are expand our convention center. The county has been trying to figure out a way to do that. They recently tore down a hotel as part of that plan. What they're trying to do is kind of, in my opinion, kind of nibbling around expanding the convention center, but not really doing something catalytic. I think we could do that in this area, for example. We have an arena on our riverfront that when I was 6 years old was probably a really nice arena in 1974, but in 2022, it's showing its age and people want to replace it. So maybe that's something we could do in this area. So what am I proposing that looks like? We build what we call Fort Washington Way West. We're going to take that tangle of interstate, compress it, simplify the entering and exiting structure, and return 25 acres to the land, to the market for redevelopment. We could potentially double the size of our convention center. We could potentially move that arena and create a new arena there. Whatever land we don't use for that purpose, we can use for expanding the downtown street grid and expanding the city to the west. It also, if we think about that reconnecting to the riverfront, if we think about reconnecting west, we could also take the land to the west of this area, which right now is underutilized, kind of light industrial land, and we could potentially expand the city even farther west. My suggestion would be to create maybe an innovation district in the southern half of this area. You can kind of see a lighter colored line that kind of divides the new area. North of that, we can create a new urban neighborhood. And in this neighborhood, we can do things like be purposeful about having inclusive housing. We can be purposeful about making sure it's connected via transit to the city and to the highways. And basically, you can create new housing out of thin air if you take this approach. And everyone that we've spoken to about this has thought it was an interesting idea. Most people are on board with it. What we're running into is that the highway engineers are not on board with it. And they're the ones that hold the key to this process. So we have created Bridge Forward to educate and advocate for breaking into that highway design process to be able to ask the engineers to consider different decisions that nearly 20 years ago simply weren't on the radar. Because now we do have an expanding city. I'm not sure how it is for Cleveland, but in Cincinnati, for the first time in my lifetime, for the first time in 60 years, we've actually gained some population. And in order to keep that momentum up, we have to think outside the box. The thinking of the 20th century did not lead to prosperity for, frankly, any of the cities in Ohio. Columbus, probably the notable exception, but certainly not Cincinnati or Dayton or Toledo or Cleveland. So how can we think about new ways to utilize our infrastructure to promote growth at the local level? And for us, we think this is the biggest opportunity we've got. So we are trying to meet with people and get them on board with the idea. We've got a lot of buy-in from politicians, from business leaders, from other civic groups. Like I said, what happened recently is the DOT came to town and basically told people to stop talking to us. Because if we kept pushing this idea, we were going to scuttle the bridge project. We might not get funding. It'll be another 7 years before we can do anything, and try to portray us as the bad guys. And as Cam said, we're not here to rock anybody's world and be obstructionist. We're trying to, like I said, crack into that decision-making process, because the average person doesn't usually walk up to ODOT and say, hey, I have a better idea. Have you thought about this? And I think they just don't know what to do with us in many respects. But, you know, we very quickly took the idea, we're gonna determine who the winners and losers would be with this. We're gonna reach out to the winners and try and get them on board. We're gonna try and figure out ways to mitigate who might be a loser. So that when we eventually go public with this, we've been doing what we call the consensus building stage, which is individual one-on-one meetings with people who are the stakeholders to try and, you know, get the temperature of the water. How would this idea be received? Everyone loves it. The problem is they don't know how to go from we love this idea to shovels on the ground, and that's the point we're at right now. And like I said, we must have struck a nerve, because ODOT told us to kind of pipe down. But as I heard a quote once that said, if you make people in power nervous, you're probably doing something right. And I'm going to go with that for now, because I think this is too big of an opportunity for us down here to really take something that is right now, it's going to be a big project and it's going to happen. We know that. We're trying to have as good of an impact on it as we can. And the ODOT version will definitely add lanes and increase throughput. But once the last truck drives off site and it's finished, the city of Cincinnati, Hamilton County, we get no advantage from it for $2 billion, or well, it's probably $4 billion now. So that's what we're trying to do. We've got our group. We're finishing up with the consensus building. Cam, I don't know how your process went. I'm scared to death, because we've got some people who are ready to write articles and start getting this out there, and let the chips fall where they may.
Start writing. And we wrote, you know, and yeah, we got phone calls, but you know what? You know, as long as you come with facts, can't say anything.
Yeah, you know, that's what I've been thinking. We were really hoping that there were a couple of civic organizations, we'll just leave it at that, in town who would get on board with us. And they have sided with ODOT. They just want to get a project built. And I was told as recently as yesterday that they're not happy with what we're doing. To which my reply was, well, you know, they ought to be the ones supporting this, not me. But since they're not, too bad, so sad. So
my first question is there sort of a looming deadline, or what do you have what would be like a victory for you in the medium term?
So just last week, so not only did ODOT say to quit talking to us, the message got put through to Cincinnati City Council. We had a couple of council members we've been talking closely with, and all of a sudden they got real cold. So the message was received. We were able to work with them and say, like we said, hey, we're not trying to stop this bridge. It's going to get built. We understand that. What we just want is to see a better bridge. And so we actually were able to get a resolution passed through council. And these things have no real teeth, but they're kind of, you know, gestures. And that resolution said that land recapture should be part of the ODOT process. So that was bigger than we thought it would be. Some of the local lobbyists were surprised to hear that we got that done. And what that does is it sets the stage for enabling us to ask the questions at the next level. We're still looking for someone to be a champion, to be that first person to jump on and say yes. So Cam, I was interested in the question you answered before. Was there a particular group or person that got on board where you kind of felt things tip in your favor? We're still looking for that. We're still fighting for that. But we don't have it yet, but we're going to get there.
For us, what we did, we did a lot of research. You know, I'm pretty sure you have as well, just on the issue. And it seems like we've been talking about this bridge for half of my life. So I know that there's tons of research and documentation on it. What we were able to find was there was a study that was done on our bus system that was commissioned actually by a Republican. And I went to that Republican, and that's kind of where we got our credibility from, because he is someone who is part of the business community structure. He is in it. He's a CEO, but he understands his employees use the bus. So this is something that he cares about. This is something that, you know, crosses political spectrums for him. And that, I feel like that was the first step for us. That was our first person who was like, I could go to Springdale and be like, you know, I got this business leader who is saying that, you know, he's with it and, you know, he's supporting it, and they know this name, and, you know, that would help them get on board too. So I would just encourage you to continue to find champions and partners. I would love to learn more about this, about what you're doing as well, so that I could push it and, you know, be of assistance to you too. But just continue to find, you know, partners and people. What has council said about this? I guess we could talk about it offline, but I would try to go to council or try to go to the commissioners, or we spent a lot of time in Todd Portun's office too. You know, the late Todd Portun, spent a lot of time with him. So I would start there for sure.
Yeah. Understanding that this is, you know, for example, the convention center and the arena, those are county level problems. The county has to jump in on those. Reconnecting the street grid to the west, that's a city level problem. US 50 runs through here. Could we possibly pull US 50 out of this and reroute it somewhere else? That's a state level problem. The more we dug in, the more we found the intricacies, and it's like you said, like putting the benches on the street, you find out that's technically not legal for you to do that, I think was the story, right? And you don't know that till you start trying to do something. And we've been trying to be nimble and respond quickly and try and come up with ideas. And credibility is the thing. What we found is that, you know, I can send an email to the mayor's chief of staff and ask to get on his calendar. But if someone, like you said, with an office down on 4th Street calls the mayor and says, you should talk to this guy, it's a whole different ballgame. So when I say we tried to identify the winners and losers, we tried to get those winners on board and get those connections. And that has been a big help in a lot of ways. What we're fighting is that expertise gap that we have trouble overcoming when fighting ODOT. Someone said in the chat, you know, no matter how many lanes get built, they get filled. That's right. You know, you cannot get tempted into a discussion of induced demand. People's eyes glaze over, they turn off mentally. But it's a real thing. It's why the state DOT looks like they know what they're talking about, because they build something that instantly gets packed with cars. So they must know what they're talking about. But what people don't understand is that transportation is a dynamic system. So if you create more capacity, it's not like a tank with pressurized gas. You add capacity and you lower the pressure. No, it's a dynamic system. When you add capacity, now more people get drawn into the mix. So it's not really like gas or like water, it's different. And conversely, taking lanes out doesn't mean there will be more congestion. What happens is people make other decisions. People decide to use transit, and now that they have better connections, they won't get on the highway. What was it, a couple of years ago, that highway in Atlanta caught fire and closed, and they were talking about 200,000 cars a day use this highway, it's Carmageddon. Well, guess what? They never found it. There was no traffic backup because those people went on different roads, chose to make trips at different times, chose to go a different way. And so that's how traffic systems work. And while I personally would not have a problem with not building a bridge, I honestly think that some congestion pricing would free up traffic on that bridge and show us exactly how much people are willing to pay for it. But that's not how we do things in this country.
Yeah, yeah. They are going to do it in New York City finally. It's, I
Yeah.
think, after years of discussion. Yeah. Or there was that down in Louisville, they had a mega big bridge project.
Mm,
You're probably familiar with that. There was some backlash too, and they went ahead and built it with a small, it was $2.2 billion, I believe. Yeah, very, very pricey. And, they went ahead and built it with a small toll. It was like $1.50 or something. And people were going way out of their way to avoid this $2.2 billion new bridge because they didn't want
right.
to pay it. They didn't think it was worth $1.50 to cross. So that was sort of interesting, and I think sort of embarrassing for, it was the state of Kentucky and the state of Indiana.
Yep.
Both went in on that.
Yeah. So another thing that happened with that project that people don't talk about is they took a couple of one-way streets down in Louisville and converted them to two-way streets just as part of that project. I don't have the statistics in front of me, and you can look them up, but roundly speaking, on the streets that converted, crime went down, traffic speeds went down, accidents went down, businesses started up. People don't, again, it's this idea that traffic engineers know how to build cities. They don't. They know how to move cars around. City building is something different. And city building, streets are a platform for building wealth. I want to create more of that platform for building wealth for everybody in the city. I don't just want to make it easier for a car to get from Detroit to Miami running through our town.
So at this point, I think we should open it up to, does anyone have questions for Cam or Brian? I think you guys are able to talk, but I'm not 100% sure about that. If you want to, or if you want to use the chat, I think we should do that. I think we should do questions. Is there any, or did anyone notice any previously in the discussion they want to respond to? No, there's a question. We had someone earlier. We had someone earlier from Toledo. Vera Mendoza from the Ability Center was on one of our panels earlier and talked a little bit about that. But in this session, no, we don't have anyone here from the Toledo campaign. There are, I think someone from the Ability Center is in the audience. I don't know if they'd want to chime in. Brittany, with any tips. Or if anyone in the audience has any insight about how Toledo pulled it off, I'd be interested to hear. It's sad that we haven't, Toledo, they've been talking about expanding transit in Detroit for ages too. And it was surprising for me to see Toledo do it before Detroit. I really thought back in 2016, they were ready to go, and we still haven't seen that happen in Detroit. So.
You know, I like Toledo. I spend time up in Toledo. It's a nice place. It boggled my mind that they didn't run Sunday service though. Like, you're the fourth largest city in the state, and you don't have a functioning bus system on the weekend. So I'm very happy that they were able to get their levy passed. And I had met the previous CEO at a conference years ago. And she came to Toledo and hit the ground running. I think that she really laid the groundwork before she moved on to be successful in getting this levy passed. And they did a lot of the things that we did in Cincinnati, is around coalition building and involving the people who actually use the system. What does that look like? And also looking to the future. Who do you want to market this towards, and things like that. So. Yeah, shout out to Toledo. I'm very excited about what Columbus is trying to do too. It's good to see this all over Ohio. It really is.
So Brittany did chime in a little in the chat. And one thing I think is really interesting about Toledo is that disability advocates were very instrumental, apparently, in passing it. And that Brittany from the Ability Center says that people in the community wanted to support people with disabilities, which is really Awesome and admirable. So that, I think that's an interesting lesson for other communities. To do a better job partnering with the disability community and elevating sort of their needs potentially.
Cam, let me ask you a question. Did you guys do a lot of like outreach meetings at like community centers? Like one of the people we reached out to was the West End Community Council. Unfortunately, some people still aren't having in-person meetings. And I think for grassroots efforts, seeing people face to face, shaking hands is important. Were you guys able to do that through the pandemic?
Yeah, so fortunately for us, when we were in our heyday, the pandemic was not going on. And so we were everywhere. The first meeting that we went to was in Mount Healthy. We didn't even start in the city. We started in the suburbs. We went right to the suburbs. We looked at voting data. We looked at some of, at that time, our county was still sort of red. So we were looking at this polling data and we went to places that were sort of 50-50. And that is where we started with Mayor James Wolf instantly bought into what we were doing, and he helped us sell it to other municipalities in the county. So we did all kinds of events. We went to community councils. We went to city councils outside of the city. Spent a lot of time in Springdale, Sharonville. We were everywhere talking about a better bus service. And again, like we understand that those the communities that I named, all of them aren't going to have the same bus service. All of them aren't going to have big buses. So what does transportation look like for them too? And that is a conversation that we had. And, it was very fruitful. It was I think that they appreciated being engaged very, very early on. I think that was the key for us, is engaging them before anybody was organized. Like we were organized before anybody else was organized. So we engaged some of the suburban communities first. And a conservative block of the city kind of taking a liking to us too. And for I think part of their thing was, it was in their minds, we're saying, screw government, we're going to build these benches without government, blah, 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 blah. So that's why they resonated. But like I said, it was a very interesting marriage, that we were able to build at the time. But to answer your question, yes, we had a lot of community events, a lot of them. We went to the Clifton Market. We went. We asked various business owners so we could set up outside of their business, have a table with a map, things like that. Yep.
Do you know? Is it Steve Anderson over there at Metro?
That name doesn't sound. I think so.
I think he's new. I met with him when I was talking to them about, in this new district, could we run bus routes through here? What would a shuttle look like that might run from Ohio to Kentucky over the bridge to take? Because one of the things ODOT said is they were surprised how many trips simply started in Cincinnati and ended in Covington, or vice versa, Covington and ended in Cincinnati. So, my question is, maybe we can have a very small shuttle type service that runs back and forth through here. That's when I learned that Sorta in Southwest Ohio and Tank in Northern Kentucky are very different animals, and they do not talk to each other much. And that's a shame.
It's weird. I agree. And that's something that I yelled about all the time, is that like, you guys are right there and you don't talk, your schedules aren't synchronized. Like, it doesn't make any sense that, I got to get off a Tank bus and then we'll wait 45 minutes for a Cincinnati bus when they should be lined up. The busy routes should be lined up with each other. And it perplexes me that they don't talk. I agree with you. It's crazy. And I think part of that, some of it is like, it's also involved with the state laws. Like we can't run a Cincinnati bus over there. Their bus can only come a certain part to. It's crazy. It's convoluted. It's crazy. Like,
right.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And like you said, the West Side, those people are very close to jobs over at the airport. But how do they get there using transit?
Yeah, got to go all the way downtown, 15 minutes just to go downtown, then go to. That's crazy. No, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. Yep.
So do we have any more audience questions? If not, maybe we'll just do, if people, here we go. We got Will Tarter. who is a fan of yours, Cam, and was excited
A
to hear
huge fan.
out here in Cleveland. Really good guy. Will,
Thanks,
what's your
Angie.
question? Yeah.
Hey Cam, this is Will. It's good to hear your thoughts today. My question is, can you talk about the timing of the election for a ballot vote? Was it strategic for a fall 2021 ballot from a turnout standpoint, like primary versus general, odd year versus even year, or was that just how it came to be from a coalition building timing standpoint?
I think, and that's a great question. I think for the business community, it was all about timing. I think for them, for us, from advocates, we have been pushing for a levy every year. Like we were convinced that no matter what year we put this on, it was going to pass because we saw the momentum in the community. We were there. We're on the ground. We're talking to the people. This is what they want. But it was definitely strategic for them to put it on the ballot when they did. They put it basically in a Democratic primary where, like, you know, we had our county is very purple. It's like we still say it's light blue. We'll see this election how blue it gets, but it's light blue, and they lined it up with that election because they knew that a lot of Democrats would come out. But we did not. What we didn't forecast was a pandemic. And so some of our voters did not vote for this. They came out and voted against it because, you know, a pandemic just happened. And now you're asking people to raise their taxes. So we were thrown into a whirlwind when the pandemic hit and the election was postponed and everything. It was wild, but it was very strategic what election to do this in and how to go about it and how it was marketed. I've got all of the marketing stuff from it, and it's amazing how they marketed this to certain people.
Yeah, I would say that I think if you're gonna put something on a ballot, put it on the ballot when you have the largest number of people coming out to vote. We have a strong mayor system again down here, and I think that one of the biggest problems is they chose to set the strong mayor elections the year after the national elections. And I think what happens is a lot of the people that generally are pro programs like this, they don't come out that next year because they're just mentally exhausted from the presidential election. And so, you know, we made it through 8 years of a mayor who I don't think he was doing much work for us here. The new administration, however, I've got big hopes for them. But yeah, if you want to get the people who are more likely to be for your idea, I suggest putting it on those years where you're going to have a larger voter turnout.
Agreed. And that's what I was telling, you know, the powers that be is like, if you guys don't do this soon, then we're just going to go to the ballot ourselves. Luckily, in the city of Cincinnati, we can petition our government. That's something that is very unique, you know, and you don't see in a lot of places. But, you know, that's what got them sped up too, because they did not want us to take this to the ballot ourselves and it passed. They didn't want that. So yeah, but I would agree with Brian is that you would want this in the highest turnout election possible. They put this in kind of a low turnout election to where they could just hyper focus on the voters that they knew were going to come out and turn them out. But that runs into risk. Like I said, we barely won.